Hi guys. I'm gonna go ahead and see if anybody hops on, and we'll get started here in just a few minutes. Give some time for everybody to come on. Hopefully everybody is having a good day so far. So looks like some people are finally getting on. Well, like I said, I'm gonna wait a couple minutes just for some people to go ahead and hop on. I said I'd be starting right at 6. So like I said, we're give you all a couple minutes. I did go ahead and get a couple things together, hoping to make the process a little easier tonight. I know everybody is excited to kind of see how it all works. So hopefully my children will cooperate as well while we're doing this today. So let's see here. All right. Sorry, guys. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and just let everybody trickle in. Get myself a little more ready. I will share with you guys kind of a supply list as well of things that I get together to, hi cats, things that I get together just to be ready. So I also want everybody to just have an opportunity to see what I do. Just because I do it a certain way doesn't mean that it's necessarily the right way. I like to think that it is most of the way. But I definitely am excited to share with everybody kind of more of our epoxy process. Let's see if I can do this and add Miss Cat. So, well, hopefully everybody had a great day today. It's a good Friday. I don't actually do anything besides this, so I have been kind of crafting all day, working on a couple of other cups and doing some epoxy coasters as well. So I'm going to go ahead and start to tell everybody kind of what you guys are going to need this evening or normally when you do it. Hi, Kat.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. Trying to figure this all out. Never done this before. So.
As I say, this is probably one of my first times as well. So yeah. So I was going to wait a couple minutes and just let some people kind of trickle in. I know that they're going to be able to come back and watch this as well. So at least people can reference it later on too.
Right. Well, hopefully we can have you on here a few more times and grow this page.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
I've had quite a few people asking me about tumblers. That's why I added tumblers to our group.
Yeah, I mean, and it's something that I just really got into since the quarantine has started. So I haven't been doing it very long, but I've learned a lot and learned what not to do and what to do in certain situations. So, what I always say with my tumblers is, you have to be ready to improvise because things don't always happen the way you want them to. So normally that's one of my biggest things is if it doesn't work the way that you originally plan it, just kind of improvise and you're going to figure it out. And just because you don't necessarily like it doesn't mean somebody else isn't. So I'm really hard on myself when it comes to some of the designs. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I think we all are sometimes.
So, I
Do
mean,
you
but
do anything else?
so I don't right now. I do custom, so we just do custom design work. I don't really do a lot of sublimation or anything like that. I don't do the cookie cutter SVG pack bundles unless I have a client that specifically is wanting something like that. I'm more of a you kind of tell me what you're looking for and then we go from there in design. So the cup that I'm going to be working on today and that I will continue to update everybody on is one of our custom design pieces. So it's just a design that either they have seen and we take it and we're improving on it ourselves, or taking it in more of a direction that they are wanting it as well. So we
Right.
do t-shirts and everything else as well. But I really do enjoy doing the tumblers and working with the resin. So
And now, do you have a Etsy or a Facebook or
we have a Facebook and it's just Ballsy Creations. It's currently the only thing that we have right now. Because we do custom work, we haven't really developed our line yet. So
right?
we're going to start working on those kind of things here in the next year. But our biggest thing has been just getting our name out locally. Since we are here in St. Louis, we have like crafted pages and so we do a lot of local pages here.
All right.
So,
Well, make sure to
oh, yeah.
put your link on there.
Yes, I will. Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and just start working and just try to tell everybody what I'm doing and how I do it.
Okay. I
I'll,
don't know if you want to turn me off to make the screen bigger
I don't know.
because I only have a half a
Let's see.
screen, or can I do it?
I don't know.
Let me see.
Oh, there we go. All right. So, like I was saying, I'm just going to go ahead and get started and just tell everybody the things that I'm doing along the way and just kind of show you the process that I go through. There's certain things that I do get together before I start the cup itself. So I use the Amazing Clear Cast epoxy, and it's a two-part. It's a half and half, so it's one part of A, one part of B, equal portions. I get it at like Hobby Lobby, or I'm pretty sure you can order it online. So if you're looking for anything like that, normally your local hobby store has some pretty good epoxies. I like to use this one because the smell itself is a little earthy, but it's not extremely overpowering. So we are going to be working on the KC cup that I talked about in the first video. So we have made our own cup turner just because we do a lot of orders at once. I'm going to go ahead and kind of show you here. So we're in a position where we can turn 4 cups at once, and it will rotate for a 12 to 24 hour period. I try not to touch anything on once it goes on for at least 8 hours. So you can do more than one epoxy coat within that 8 hour period. Usually they recommend about a 4 hour to wait about 4 hours before you do a second coat. It's about where I wait before I do a second coat as well. I don't always use that. If I'm only doing one cup, I just use my regular spinner here. So this is one of the arms from our big spinner. So I try to spin it like that in case I get on a whim and have to do more. So we're going to go ahead and I just put the cup in on the spinner or on the tumbler turner. Just like that. And it's already that way. These are also something that I found in your local hobby stores. You can order them on Amazon, anything like that. So before we can actually put the epoxy on, it is a half and half or equal parts mix. So I am going to turn this so you guys can see what I'm doing here. So I am going to go ahead and pour. I measured it out beforehand. Depending on the cup, it depends on how much actual epoxy you're going to use. If you do if you're just doing like a thin layer and you're just trying to get like a base layer, normally it's anywhere from, I probably make anywhere from 10 to 20 just to get enough. I normally have extra, and what I wind up doing with the extra is make it into like a jewelry, or I'll add like an opaque or a pigment powder or something like that, just to go ahead and use it all, because I don't like to waste any. Um, so basically you're going to stir this for 2 minutes. It's going to look a little cloudy once you start stirring, but that's okay as the mixture actually does mix together. It is going to become more clear. Try not to vigorously stir it, as it'll create more air bubbles in your epoxy. You want to do it nice and slow, just so that you are getting an even mix and you're not creating extra air bubbles. I like to say not to lift the stick if you don't have to. That way you're not creating unnecessary or unwanted bubbles as well. So something that I do when I'm making my epoxy is I do put down parchment paper, and I do that just because it's easy to just pick it up and clean it up once I'm done. So I do recommend to use parchment paper. I buy mine from the Dollar Tree in a box of pop-up sheets. I found that to be the easiest and best parchment paper as far as my crafting goes. It's the easiest to find in my area. Other people use, I'm sure, wax papers would work as well. So I just use it underneath the cup once I start working with the epoxy. That way, if anything drips, it's on the paper. Once the epoxy does cure or dry, it is hard for it to come up. So what I always do is, once I'm done making anything with epoxy, I clean the area with the rubbing alcohol, because that does clean it and it does get the sticky off, just as long as you are not um, letting it dry. So once it dries, it's there. And so I got a good mix on this. I know you can't really see it, but it's nice and clear. And it's nice and clear. And so we're going to set it to the side. It needs to sit for 3 minutes. And that way all of the air bubbles can rise to the top. That is pretty important, just because you don't want the bubbles in your actual epoxy. So we'll go ahead and let that sit here for just a couple minutes. So during that time, what I do, that's when I'm going to get my cup into place and just be ready to go ahead and do the epoxy itself.
Nobody needs your phone to turn on. Oh.
Sorry, guys. All right. Let's see if I can angle it down a little more for you guys while I'm working on it here. There we go. Now, we'll do a couple rounds of epoxy on this cup specifically, just because of the design that's going into it. So it really just depends. This time I measured out way more than I'm gonna need. I'd rather have more than not enough. So we're gonna go ahead and hope that I don't need all of it. Once you've let the epoxy sit here for just a couple minutes, I like to go back and take my stick across the top layer. You're going to see like the little bubbles on the top layer of the epoxy. I just take them over to the side of the cup just to kind of pop the little bubbles because you don't want any of that in your cup. So this actually looks pretty good. And so I will turn on my turner and get the cup starting to turn. I usually will do this relatively pretty quickly. You have about a half hour to 45 minutes once the epoxy is fully mixed. Normally, once it starts to get warm, that's a pretty good indication that you have reached your time limit. So I know there are people out there that use a warm epoxy. It just depends on your preference, really. I do have a heat gun that I've used just to help the epoxy dry faster, but I like to not have myself on a time crunch, so normally I don't use the heat gun. And like I said, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to drop them below or message me personally. So I just make sure I kind of start in the middle and just work the epoxy. Again, with this cup, I'm not really worried about like the glitter itself moving anywhere. So, because I'm going to cover most of the cup. I like to use a little bit of a generous and just even it out more to help with the spreading of the actual epoxy. On the turner, you get a really even, you get really even layers. So a turner is something that I recommend if you are going to actually be doing tumblers. You're going to want to invest in a turner. I know that there's many different methods of epoxy covering that you can use. However, you cannot guarantee your evenness on some of your other methods. So I know like you can do the upside down method, but it does make all of your epoxy pool down to whichever direction. So yeah, so you just want to make sure that you are getting a nice even coat. And as you can see in this, because I can see it looking at the camera, is you can see like the lines from where I press my hands. Those are going to go away as you're turning. And you can see like here how it's not glossy and wet. It's because I haven't gotten any epoxy in that area. So you really are just making sure that everything is nice and flat and even when you're going through. Like I said, you really just want to make sure that you have a nice even coat. Sometimes when I have little spots, I just stick my fingers in the cup and just do the little spot instead of a full area. But I will do this for probably a couple minutes before I feel like, okay, everything is saturated. You can feel, I wear gloves and you can still feel through the gloves what is covered and what isn't covered. And you want to make sure that you, if you're not going to tape off the top and the bottom, that you are taking it all the way to the top and all the way to the bottom in both directions. So that is something that is very important as well. Once you get a little further in the process, I do go down and I do go down and I do go down and up and down. I'm sorry, and make sure that it's just even. But you can feel it and whether or not that it is even.
Use that glove.
Once I feel like I have a nice, even, and good coat everywhere, I also do my bottoms on mine. Sorry if I seem distracted. One of my kids is in the room. Uh, so normally, um, once I feel like I have a great even coat everywhere, I make sure have my bottom done. Like I said, you're gonna be able to see whether or not it is covered, and your marks in between you dragging from your fingers are not going to be there once it dries. So that's not really something that you need to worry about. Just remember even saturation, back and forth, um, and just even saturation. So you're going to I use my other hand and just kind of make sure that I didn't get any real epoxy inside the cup. Again, if you do, it's okay. It is cleanable. You just got to clean it with um, rubbing alcohol before it dries, and you'll be able to clean it right off. How do I make the rim even? So normally when I do that in a later step. I use an I use an X-Acto knife. Once the epoxy is dried, it is still somewhat soft. It fully cures after 7 days. After 7 days, I think. So once it's dry, but it's soft. I usually just take a little X-Acto knife around the rim itself, and um, if it's not even, I will shave it. Now, in some of the next steps with this cup specifically, because it does have glitter, um, I will have to sand the cup. I'll probably do another layer of epoxy in 4 hours, and I will have to sand the cup. Maybe this next one, I might get to the 2 layers before I would have to sand the cup. The reason I do that once the epoxy has dried is just to smooth out any roughness. If you feel the cup and you feel anything on the outside of the cup, it just needs sandpaper. I use either a 320 or a 220 grit, and I just sand it once it has dried. Now, once you sand it, the epoxy will look muted. However, at the even though the epoxy will look muted, when you put your next layer of epoxy, which I tend to do all of my sanding before I put on my final layer, just so that way I can make sure that my final layer is nice and flat. Um, so I do my sanding right before my final layer, and um, it will look muted, but once you put epoxy over it, it does fill in any sanding marks and any rough spots. So now that I have this all covered in epoxy, I'm going to let it turn on the turner for 4 hours before I do another layer of epoxy. This specific cup, I am going to do another layer of epoxy before I move on to my next vinyl. I'm going to do a peekaboo effect essentially on this cup. So hopefully everyone will enjoy the progress as it goes. I do purchase from, I do purchase some of my bundles from Etsy, uh, just random things like the Kansas City. I do post or did purchase a bundle, just certain things like that. But most of my stuff I actually create myself, and most of my designs I do myself. Um, so essentially, once this is dried and you get to a certain place where you've sanded, you kind of get a cup where it's going to look like, try to get it here, where it's going to look like this. Like I said, it is muted, but it's just ready for another layer of epoxy. I actually have this smooth, so it's not only ready for another layer of epoxy, but it's ready for vinyl. So when I have a smooth surface, especially when I use glitter, I wait until I have a smooth surface before I put my vinyls on, because you can see any bumps through the vinyl. So that is one of my biggest things when I am putting vinyl on and I do use the glitter. It's going to be, make sure your surface is flat before you put the vinyl on. Because if it's not, it is going to show those little bumps if you through the glitter. So sometimes it takes one, sometimes it takes two epoxy. Just it just depends on the cup, and you have to be really flexible with what you are going to do. So hopefully, I don't really see any questions, but like I said, if anybody has questions, just let me know. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that anybody may have. So at this point in time, I'm going to let this turn for the next 4 hours. And after that, I will probably put another round of epoxy on, and then I will let it dry overnight. And tomorrow morning, when I get up, I will go ahead and work on the actual next layer of the cup, which is going to be a black layer. So I really hope that this helped anybody that may have just any thoughts of starting to do epoxy tumblers. Um, I really started with just the crafting of everything else in my Cricut, and quickly transitioned to the tumblers. I really enjoy doing them, and um, I think that as long as you are able to have a space that's big enough to let the turners spin, then try it. If you don't have the space, well, maybe create the space. Like I said, mine's in my house, so it's not like I'm outside in my garage doing this. This is in my home office. So I I mean, I'm in an open room. I would say that it's well ventilated, just because it is a big room. Um, but the smell itself isn't so protruding. So hopefully, if you have an area like that, it is okay for that area as well. So we're just gonna let this spin, and I guess I will check back with the cup tomorrow for everybody, just so that they can continue to see how it is going. Um, but like I said, anybody has questions, please feel free to reach out. Thanks, guys. I really hope you guys have a great